Hello, everybody. How can we help athletes as they face the transitionary time in their life when their sports career comes to an end and sports doesn't play as big of a role in their life anymore? On this week's Sportlight podcast, we talked to Alli Bills, former college basketball player, professional basketball player, and college coach. And she helps us with some of the things that she has learned about how to handle those transitionary moments, both as she's gone through them herself and as she's helped her players navigate that as well.
Welcome to the Sportlight podcast for parents, coaches, and athletes. The Sportlight refers to the time in an athlete's life when they have increased ability to affect the culture around them and the increased opportunity to learn life's lessons through sports. This podcast aims to help parents and coaches capitalize on their athletes' precious time in the Sportlight. The Sportlight podcast is brought to you by Especially for Athletes program.
Well, Alli, thank you so much for joining us on the Sportlight podcast today. We sure appreciate all you do for us and with us, and especially for athletes. And so thank you for taking the time today.
My pleasure. It's so great to be with you. And I love the topic that we're going to discuss, but anything I can do to help, especially for athletes. I'm just such a believer and proponent of the value of what we have going on here. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And I know you've done a previous podcast with us, but I would like to just take a second and introduce you a little bit for those who maybe come upon this podcast, but not others. So Alli played college basketball at the University of Utah, was a very decorated athlete there at the University of Utah. And then after played a little bit professionally and in the WNBA, if I remember correctly. Is that right, Alli?
Yep. Short-lived, short and sweet. It was great.
That short-lived, short and sweet time as a professional athlete is way longer than most of us get to. So that's really cool. Really cool. Then after that, you went and coached collegiately for about 10 years at Brigham Young University. Did you coach anywhere else?
I did. I coached at the University of Utah as well.
That's what I thought. Okay, so you coached at University of Utah, then BYU, and then you've been doing some other coaching and training and other things since. And so is that a good enough introduction to give people a little window into who you are?
Covered more than enough. That's perfect.
Awesome. Well, and Alli is a member of our board here at Especially for Athletes and does a lot for us and has a very shaping effect on our program. And so we really do appreciate you, Alli, and are excited to talk about this topic today because recently, we had some summits and a banquet, and you spoke to some of the youth athletes there at the summit that we held. And you talked about a topic that I think all of us go through in one way or another, and that is those transitionary moments in life. And you got to a point in your life where many athletes get to, where, you know, we've played sports, and it's been such this huge, big part of our life, and takes up such a large portion of our time and mental capacity and everything else. And then suddenly that kind of turns off and we find ourselves in this place of transition, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. And you had some realizations and took some action and talked to the kids about that. And I would love just to talk about some of those. First of all, the realization that you had in your own personal life, and then some of the things that you found to be helpful with that transitionary time from sports into other aspects of life. So would you first just tell us about that realization you had that you shared at the summit?
You bet. And I'm going to go back a little bit because, you know, whether we want it to be or not, when you spend so much time, whether in your career or as an athlete, in preparing and evolving as an athlete, as much as you don't want it to become your identity, it's such a big part of who you are that you almost don't know yourself without it because so much time is spent in it. And so I was fortunate as an athlete, I went straight into playing overseas and then playing the WNBA and then directly into coaching. So I stayed involved, and it's like I never really fully hung up my shoes. Mm-hmm. But when I went from being the athlete to the coach, there was an evolution there because I was in the mindset of not just competing, but being the best, of winning, and that mental focus of being my best self as an athlete. And when I shifted to becoming a coach, it took some time for me to want my players to be better than I ever was. I was still of the mindset of like, I need to be the best, and I need to make sure that I continue to evolve. Well, my career is over. It's time for me to use my experience to make those around me better. And for some people, it happens immediate. For some people, it never happens. They never get past their own game in order to make those around them better. They always have to hold on to that. And I think that's a huge part of transition, is to recognize that there comes a time where you're not the innovator, you're not the creator, you're not the operator, and you become the teacher, and you become the influencer and provide wisdom. But it takes some humility, and it takes stepping back to realize that I've had my time, and whether I like it or not, people are getting better than me. And it doesn't mean I can't progress and still improve my game, but that's not my place. That's not my purpose at this point. So fast forward to getting out of coaching. And I remember my mom asking me, are you ready to get out of coaching? Because once you're out of coaching, you're not Alli Bills, the basketball player coach anymore. You are, just going to fit into the normal world, and it's a different place. And by that point, I realized that sport and athletics and coaching really made me who I was, but it didn't define me anymore. It wasn't my identity. And coaching gave me time to transition from the athlete, the competitor, to really having this love for the players I was working with and making them better. And in doing that, whether it's as a coach or as a parent, you can lose yourself a little bit the more passionate you become about making others better. And so, I really feel like I evolved from the push coach, competitor coach, to really wanting to inspire and help these athletes grow. And I preface, getting into these new themes with that little story, because when I left coaching, I stayed involved. I started a basketball company, got into a different career. But as an athlete, there's a part of you that always wants to push, that always wants to compete, maybe not with other people anymore, maybe just yourself. But we were talking before just how it takes time to even not feel guilty to work out for 3 and 4 or 5 hours a day, or to understand why your body doesn't look the way that it did when you were doing that. And it doesn't mean it can't anymore, and it doesn't mean you can't anymore, but the balance is different, and priorities are different, and your purpose is different. And what I realized, the further removed I became from not just playing, but also coaching, is I still had a huge desire as a coach and a leader, and in business and in life, to impact others and to help others experience some of the wins that I had in their own way, because what it does for your confidence, what it does for your drive, and even just your mental health, to have those feathers in your cap and to have those wins. And I was blessed with a great support all growing up in helping me believe that I could do anything I wanted, and the value of hard work. But not everybody has that. But there's so much to success and small wins and those experiences that build your confidence and help you create your self-worth, that I just wanted to give back. But who was I? I mean, I left coaching. I wasn't the coach anymore. I mean, even the guys I was dating, to say I'm a mortgage lender really isn't as attractive as when I said I was coaching Division I basketball. That became the topic for the night,
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of irrelevance there that was starting to disappear from my life. And so I really felt like it had been a long time. Not to say I didn't do anything. I really tried to say yes to opportunities of triathlons, and I had done a lot of martial arts. And so I did stunt work and things like that, that it was like, whether I'm ready for it or not, I need to say yes. And I learned to be a yes person for experiences. But again, I didn't have, anything I was really working toward in growth. And for athletes, physical growth is just so fulfilling for us. I don't know why. We can read a book, write a book, but something about doing something hard physically really helps us. We can quantify the growth,
Yeah.
And so I was driven to seek for some opportunities for more growth, just so that I could actually stay relevant in a way that I could relate to young athletes and to young adults and to people and say, oh, she has an interesting story to tell. I don't have this trauma experience, or I don't have, the situation that happened that gives me that credibility to say, wow, that's a cool story and a good overcoming experience in her life. So if you want an exceptional life, if you want an exceptional story, you have to go and do exceptional things. And so that was my drive, was to continue to have a way to really influence, uplift, inspire, and motivate other people. That is where my true joy and passion comes from. So
that's awesome.
That's what got me onto the journey we'll talk about.
Yeah. And before we talk a little bit about that journey, I was reading a book because I have my daughters right now are kind of in that time where they call it the 10 years that shapes your whole life. It feels like the decade of decision, where they're choosing college majors and they're choosing where to go to college and all that stuff. And I was reading a book thinking about that talked about it's more important, instead of trying to find a profession that works, you find your passion and then you try to find a profession that allows you to do your passion, because there might be 15, so 15 professions that allow you to do that. So if you love working and inspiring people, well, there's thousands of professions where you could work with and inspire people. And I love, as you talk about your story, that you've kind of, as you've taken a step back and looked at yourself, you've thought, okay, what really does fulfill me? Was it basketball, or was it really uplifting people and helping people become better and helping people realize levels of performance that they hadn't seen before, and then finding different ways to do those things that you're passionate about? Was one thing that really stuck out among many others with what you just said. Would you speak to that a little bit and kind of how you've seen that in your life?
Absolutely. I did go from coaching into starting a basketball company into becoming, a full-time mortgage lender. And I can honestly say that just what you told your daughters, the part I loved about coaching, I am doing that exact same thing in my business on the lending side. And that is, you're giving people hope, you're teaching, you're educating, you're motivating, inspiring. And in the end, it's still about those clients. It's still about those players. And I think people can see right through, and transparency as far as like genuine love and care for. And so if those are your passions, whatever they are, you can find it in anything you do. And sometimes you have to actually do a job that doesn't fulfill all those passions, but you also at that point need to go outside of your job and make sure you're doing something that hits on the rest of them that really make you feel fulfilled. And there's so many ways to do that. We can fit so much in our life if we understand the value of time, and that life is short and we're not guaranteed tomorrow. And that passion is really important in order for us to get further faster.
Yeah. Tell me more about what you've learned about recognizing the value of time.
So I have a mentor that I absolutely adore. His name is Jesse Itzler, and he started a marquee jet company, sold it to Warren Buffett, part owner of the Atlanta Hawks. And he is married to Sarah Blakely, who is the owner of Spanx. And these are big time people, but very normal, raw, ordinary, genuine people. But I heard him speaking one time, which immediately I knew I needed to be around this person more. And he said, so many times in life, we go do things just to do things, but we need to do what we love with the people we love more often. And he talked about going and visiting his dad, who was getting older. And he said, my dad has about 10 years left. I see him twice a year. And so, 10 years is a long time. Well, that's 20 visits. I have 20 visits with my dad. And this was at a time where my dad actually was very sick. So I had a different appreciation for time and what I would have given for more time. And that's not just in our relationships and with the people we care about, but it's also in our own personal experiences that we're having in this life and the people that you can bring along the way to do that. That really hit home for me, just that we need to value time more. And if we want to accomplish something, we don't talk about it, we do it. If we want to compete in something, we don't talk about it, we do it. And that became a mental shift for me in 2019 when I started working with Jesse and being a part of, a calendar program and a mentorship program. And it's just taken off since then.
Yeah, and I'm excited to hear some of the things that you've learned and experience some things you shared with us. I'm really thinking of our athletes and parents of athletes right now, because I think if we're intentional, and Dustin and I love that word, intentional.
For sure.
If we're intentional, we can help them see things that maybe they won't see otherwise as they're growing up in sports. Emphasizing the hard work, the process, the resiliency that they display, that they love being with teammates, that they, sometimes the sports, we get so focused on outcomes, wins,
yes,
losses, stats, but those wins, losses, and stats, they fade away, and then you look silly if you keep talking about them, right?
For sure.
But the attributes that you develop in sports, if we can put into the mind of youth to think about that, like, okay, what does this look like? All these things I've learned in sports, because it's really a laboratory to learn some of the greatest lessons in life. And how can I be more, what does that look like in my studies, in my relationships? What does this look like with my goals and passions moving forward? We could really help some kids. I remember, Alli, and I'm sorry, this is taking like a little divergent, but I have a brother who is a very decorated Marine and now is a member. He works with the FBI and does some really great things for people. And he was kind of a rambunctious, hard kid in LA County, California. Like any of my friends who are listening to this will kind of laugh and remember my brother and what he was like. He was just a great person. You love being around him, but he would get in fights in high school, and he would stick up for people, and he would and so I had gone down and spoken to this youth group down where he was, and he had recently returned from Iraq and on a military operation there. And they kind of had done this little welcome home for him just days before. And then I went home and spoke to a group, and there was kind of a line of people who wanted to say hi to me after and stuff like that. And we were driving home, and my brother said to me something. He was just like, do you realize what just happened? Like, we just had people, they just threw me a parade, and people lined up to thank you for things we used to get in trouble for in high school. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, they threw me a parade for like going and fighting, right? And they just lined up to talk to you for entertaining people and for engaging people. And remember what you were like in Mr. Gray's math class, and it's just kind of interesting to me that it kind of hit me at that moment that if we give kids time and we're intentional and we really try to help them see the goodness within them and the attributes that they display on the court, the field, that they can really learn to develop attributes that will serve them better in life as they move forward with with other parts of their life besides sports. But maybe we could be more intentional about that. And I know you've said a lot about that already, but do you have any thoughts after mentoring people for so many years on how we could do that maybe even better?
I think the biggest thing, and it goes back to kind of those moments, is I love that you brought up that the one thing your brother got in trouble for is the thing he's being celebrated for is your kids come a certain way. and they have some incredible attributes and characteristics already, and they grow and are used for good, or they grow and are used for less good. And I think as parents is where it starts, is that growing up, sports is a huge bonding opportunity for parents and kids, huge. And I hear so many athletes that have kind of reached their own goals as an athlete, whether it's high school, college, or professional. And they're like, I don't care if my kids play sport. I just want them to know that I love them. If they want to, I'm not going to push them. And I have mixed feelings about that, because I'm like, you are who you are today because of athletics. Mm-hmm. And don't let your kids miss out on an opportunity because maybe you're saying that because you got burned out, or you didn't have a great relationship with a parent in the end because you were pushed too hard. Let sport be the place where they really learn who they are and develop those already great qualities and learn how to carry them through life. But I think too often, as mentioned, parents and coaches get caught up emotionally. It's not their intention in the wins and losses, and they lose sight of the child and their development and why they're really there. And I don't even care what level it is. In college, if it becomes about the wins and losses, you're really missing out on an opportunity to not just develop, but learn from these kids that are incredible and really guide and help them through some important growth years and decisions in their life that will take them to a whole other level. So I think recognizing that these bonding moments through sport or through whatever your child's doing is a way for you to truly connect and use those examples that are given to us daily through athletics and sport to guide them to use their already God-given natural abilities, talents, and gifts to improve upon and grow, and not have it be about the wins and losses. We just have to redefine what winning is. And, parents, again, and coaches, it's the emotional that makes them forget that. So that intention of why they're coaching, why their kids are in sport, why they're so engaged needs to shift to be so I can be closer to my child, so I can remember these experiences as a positive in both of our lives,
Yeah, that's awesome. In fact, I've told parents many times, there are no bad attributes. They just have to be guided. Like, for example,
Definitely.
You have a kid who's hard-headed. You hear a parent say, oh, my kid is so hard-headed. My response would be, awesome. Just make sure they're hard-headed about the right things. Direct that hard-headedness toward the right things and train it. Don't try to eliminate it. And a kid that cares about sports, that cries after games, awesome. They care so much about something that it hurts that bad. Use that fact that's one of their attributes to help them learn to deal with disappointment. And it's almost like if I would have a harder time having a kid that was careless, because I don't think that they would learn the lessons of sports. And so it's like identifying that and then saying, what would it look like to channel this to a direction that would be a blessing to them in their life? And how could this go the wrong way where this becomes a detriment to them in their life? And then shape it instead of eliminate behaviors or attributes or whatever. And that's a big part of coaching, I imagine, as well. And so
here's a good question to kind of ask yourselves, anyone watching, and I ask myself a lot, is that there's 6 human needs that drive us in life. There's certainty, that stability. There's uncertainty, a little adventure, and just needing that creativity. There's significance and need to feel significant. Maybe you're not feeling that with your peers or parents. Love, huge need for love. Maybe you don't have that. You're not getting it in the way that you need. So there's 4, and there's 2 more. And the final 2 are really where we're trying to get in life. We don't lose those other things. Mm-hmm. But if they're our main focus as a coach, you need to feel significant. You need people to know. As a player, you need that stability. You can't take that risk to get better. Whatever it is, ultimately we're trying to get to a place where our full focus in life is about personal growth in order to contribute and give back, which is number 6. So 5 is personal growth. That's a need, that's a drive. And 6 is contribution. That is a need, that is a drive. And I think if those 2 become our primary focus in life, what ways can I grow so I can better give back? Then we're on the right track. And it's not going to eliminate sometimes that need to feel loved or significant. We can't change our past, but focusing on those other 2 can really solve a lot of those other problems as well.
Yeah.
Or needs and drives. And I think recognizing that kids are no different. I mean, when they're doing something, they're trying to fulfill and satisfy a need, and recognizing that, and then teaching them about that growth and then how to share and give back is super fulfilling.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I was listening to someone speak a while back, and they did this study about what kids are popular in high school, what makes kids popular in high school. And having worked with a lot of high school kids, sometimes it seems like completely inexplicable. Like you look and you go, wow, how did that kid emerge from this group of kids?
Yeah.
And one of the things that the number one factor that they talked about is that kids who are well liked by their peers love their peers and are happy to see their peers succeed. And I thought that, going with those 2 things that you said at the end there, that personal growth but also that, what was that 6th one that you want to make? Contribution. That those who kind of live with arrows out, that are looking for others, and especially for athletes, we're biased to one phrase, that those who live their life with their eyes up and do the work to try to contribute to other people, those end up, because when people feel a contribution being made to their own life by an individual, there is that bond that takes place, and there's the love, genuine love. And so some of those things that Disney shows would tell us makes a kid popular in high school, it's actually kind of the opposite, right? It's those kids that can be settled with those 4 things, to go with what you just shared with us, that and then start to live outside of themselves and try to make other people feel that way. One of my favorite quotes was, there was this girl who was dealing with something with her appearance as a high schooler, and she was sad about it. And her mom told her, you do everything you can to make yourself look beautiful, but the moment you walk out that door, forget about yourself and try to make other people feel beautiful.
I love that.
I think that's a secret to life, right? We do all we can for ourselves. We really try hard. It's not that we don't do that. But the moment we walk out our doors, if we can learn to make a contribution to other people, it will lead to a way more fulfilling life. And so
I love that. And part of talking about these adventures I've been on, so much of it seems selfish because I get so much in return, even though you're growing, yes, and you're contributing, but what comes from both of those is just like so rewarding. But these first 4 that we talked about, so much of it is, you got to feel good about who you are. And I think the kids that have friends at school and their peers really like them have this really base confidence, first. And so they're not trying to prove themselves or one up someone else. And because of that, they can genuinely cheer for someone else's success. Yeah. But I think getting kids to a place where they really love who they are is the key to enjoy that growth and that contribution, because I really think there's so many kids that, they doubt themselves and think less of themselves than all the people around them. But our perception of what other people think is solely based on what we think about ourselves. We get defensive because we're already thinking that, how could someone think that we're great, So I think that, again, these experiences that I will talk about, a big part of them is there's never an age where it's not important to do things to make you feel really good, whether putting makeup on in the morning and making sure that you're well groomed and dressed nice. But again, just doing those things that is a feather in the cap, is a small win. And there's never a time in your life where we don't need those things. Otherwise we get stagnant. And if we're not progressing, we know what that means. We're moving back.
Yeah. And so let's go there. I would love to talk about some of these things when you had that realization that, okay, I need to push myself. I need to have that aspect of my life again where I'm pushing. Sports provided it for so long, but now I need to be more intentional about pushing myself a little bit out of my comfort zone or a lot out of my comfort zone so I can continue to experience that personal growth and really feel solidified in who you are. And you went to some pretty drastic measures to push yourself out of your comfort zone and to fulfill that need that all of us have. And I would love to learn from what you've done. So tell us a little bit about when having that realization and what you decided to do with it.
You bet. So the first challenge I was given in 2019 was to make sure I calendar my life, that I decide what these trips and events that I want to participate in order to grow are going to be, and put them on the calendar and schedule life around it. And now people with a lot of children are like, this is really hard to do. I'm going to be on the back burner. But what I want to say to that before going into this is just that it is so inspiring for a child to see their mother competing in, and I don't have children, but what I've seen, to be competing in and overcoming and doing hard things, that sometimes doing some of those things for yourself not only inspire your children, but you feel better about who you are as a person, as a mother, and the influence you have and what they're going to take away from that is incredible. And so it's never going to be an easy time. So calendar the things in your life that you want to do, and maybe you don't even know you want to do them. Just sign up for some things that you might be interested in and do them. So calendar your life first, or you'll never do them. It'll be something you talk about forever. Mm-hmm. And then every year you need to choose one thing, and you call it a Misogi, and it is an event that is truly life-changing. We say life-changing all the time, but is it really life-changing? What's something that's going to change your perspective, a mental shift, something that's going to push you to a limit you haven't experienced in a long time? Every year, you're going to do one of those. For some people, it is writing a book. It is starting a new company, and that is awesome. I would want to do those at the same time and in conjunction with something physical, because physical for me is measurable. Mm-hmm. It's fulfilling. Now, I'm super broken as we go into these events. My body has been through a lot, 14 knee surgeries. I currently don't have an ACL. No doctor wants to do surgery on it. We're still having that debate, too young for replacements. But in doing all of that, physical is where I need to go for me. So the very first challenge I signed up for was in August of 2020, and it was called the Utah Everesting. And it is the equivalent of hiking Everest in regard to elevation, 29,029 feet. It's called 29029. And it's 29.9 miles uphill. It's at Snow Basin. You complete that 13 times in 36 hours. And the beauty of it is that it's me in the mountain. It is an event. It's not a race. I've never done endurance sports. But one thing I felt like is it's been a long time since I've had a conversation with myself in a place where I was uncomfortable, not life uncomfortable, but self-inflicted, sport-related, competition, uncomfortable. And, we talk so much about eyes up, do the work. Well, this was the perfect example of where to use this phrase and how it's so applicable in life. But when I went to that mountain, I did all the preparation. I did all the training. They give you a great program. And I trained really like every Saturday of my summer was a 9, 12, whatever hour, but I was committed to that. But when I went to that mountain, there was moments where middle of the night, I was having those conversations as, do I do one more climb? You have to get it all in, finish by 5 o'clock in that 36 hour. do I go back and rest? And I have to say that I was happy with the mental toughness that I had gained over time or not lost through sport, and had that desire to push at a time would have been very easy. And I probably would have been okay to take a break. But the coolest part about it is, as I was doing the work, I had my eyes up and I was so inspired by the people around me. I'm on this mountain, but the lady next to me, she's a cancer survivor. She was doing the world championship Ironman in Kona on chemotherapy. She's 60 something years old and she is just going for it. And then there's another lady whose poor husband passed away during COVID. He was signed up for the race. She's wearing a backpack with his picture on it. She hadn't trained for it, and she was climbing that mountain for him. That by doing these events and doing what I can to put myself in a situation where I can test my own resilience that we talk about, and instead of what the world brings, just put myself in a situation that's hard and see how I handle it. Believe me, a lot of things I face in the world aren't going to compare to some of those emotions and experiences on that mountain. But who I was inspired by in the process. When you do hard things and you go to these events, there's like-minded people that are trying to grow and do better. But I was just motivated by the people around me. And the other thing, once a coach, always a coach, or once a point guard, you never are quiet after that. But just being able to encourage people along the way and, again, fulfill kind of those passions. My climb got easier the more I encouraged other people. My climb got easier the more I was willing to keep my eyes up and be aware of their needs, but also to be inspired by them. It's equally important to allow others to help you and to learn from them as it is to encourage and push. But when we were going into that hike, we were taught a lesson, and I love it so much of what we believe with E4A, and that's 3 steps. And I remember just repeating this on the mountain, probably, the first 3 climbs, it's 2.3 miles up. And overall, it's 29.9 miles uphill. You ride the gondola down and they say, turn right, just go up the mountain. If you go in to get a massage, you're never going back out. So just turn right. And that was the rule. And we talked about patience as being number 1. Endurance is not about winning things. It's about not slowing down. Life is about consistency and about keeping that pace, and it's a win. It's about not slowing down, just going, keep going. But patience is huge. This is a marathon, not a sprint, just like life. The second is to be present. And so much of what we do, we are not aware of the beauty, the people, the inspiration, the teammate that needs your help or that you can learn from. But being present was key. And then number 3 was being intentional with every step, with every climb, really being able to do an equipment check. How's my water intake? How's my electrolytes? But really getting to know yourself on a totally different level by being patient, by being present, and by being intentional. And that applies to everything we do in life. And the world's a beautiful place if we live that way. Yeah, there's so much really to learn and grow. And so that experience, I have to say, you shed more tears at the end of that when you might have finished, I finished, whether it's in the 20 something hour mark, 36 hours, someone comes through that finish line and maybe they didn't complete the 13. To stay on that mountain for 36 hours is probably a lot harder than finishing a little faster and being on the mountain for 23 hours. And there's just so much to learn and grow and gain from putting yourself in positions to get to know yourself better, testing your resilience, surroundings where there's like-minded people that can push and help you grow. So that was the first event that I did that was pretty significant. Someone ever asked if I did a marathon? Absolutely. I did a marathon uphill. No one's asking me how fast I ran it, if I ran it. But yes, I have done a marathon. 30 miles uphill counts.
I think that really does count. And I love those as you were talking about, you put it on the calendar and you plan around it. I think that's applicable for individuals. I think that's applicable for families. I think that's applicable for couples. I think there's a lot of those things. Justin Sua, you may know Justin or have heard of Justin. Justin is the mental performance coach for the Tampa Bay Rays, and he uses a phrase: you need to live life on purpose with purpose.
Love that.
And I see that, on purpose is intentional. You're putting it on the calendar. With purpose is that you're not just putting fluff on the calendar. You're not but things that really bring purpose to your life and meaning to your life. And so I love those, those applications. Then it was be patient, be present, and be intentional.
And he says deliberate or intentional, same thing, but there's a fourth one I didn't mention, and it's execute, execute, execute. And like you said, it's not really just about, the first step is putting it on the calendar.
Yeah.
The second is to actually do it. And so a goal we've been given it's called the Kevin's rule. A guy and his buddies, every 5 to 7 weeks, you're going to do something that you look forward to. As humans, we need to look forward to things. We need to be excited about things. We get stuck in the everyday. It doesn't have to be a challenge. It doesn't have to be money, spending money, traveling that way. It can be anything that you look forward to, doing a hike with a family. But think, if you put every 5 to 7 weeks, and you put something on the calendar with a spouse, a date, if you do it for a little family getaway, if you're going to go to lagoon, whatever it is, have it on your calendar, plan it as a family. Think by the end of the year, you're going to have 10 of those. At the end of you have how many years left with how many kids, how many summers left? Yeah. You're like, okay, so we have 6 experiences left, 2 per summer with this child. We only have 3 years. Yeah. So what are those going to be? And start looking at it in terms of creating memories. Over 10 years, you have 150 memories that you've created intentionally, because as a family, you picked them out and put them on the calendar and scheduled everything else around them. That's when your kids become best friends as they grow up and get older, is they have an opportunity to build those friendships. It's great to support each other in sport, but when you travel, intentionally plan and do things together, then they become friends.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. I love that. So then you've done some other things, I know, with like some really cold water, and tell us what you've learned from that.
So one of the big parts of this whole thing is just, again, mental growth. Whether you're limited physically or not, there's just a part of, everyone in life has certain fears or limitations. I went to learn about what my limitations might be, and I'm like, oh, I don't really have any limitations. I feel pretty confident. I feel pretty good. We all have limitations, and finding out what those are can be really humbling sometimes. But a big part of working through that is understanding how to be still. It's understanding how to breathe. It's understanding how to focus. And we don't do anything in life outside of maybe really intentional. We're going to use that word a lot, yoga, intentional meditation, that really requires us intentional breath work, that requires us to get to this place where we are completely in control of our fears, of our anxieties, of our worries. And there's a lot of skills that we can learn by doing hard things, specifically getting in cold water. Cold water is incredible for your health, but it's awful. A cold shower is very different than getting in a cold lake, which is very different than getting in an ice bucket, which is different than swimming under a cold pond. They all have a different element, but they all require you to center and to focus and to face a very uncomfortable situation. So I'm really big on getting comfortable, being uncomfortable, and finding as many things I can do that make me uncomfortable, that are progressive and helping me grow. Because when we're uncomfortable, we grow. And when people feel stagnant, and we'll talk about it later, it's because they're comfortable. or they're not experiencing those winds. So I went to Minnesota. We drove out, 50 of us, to this like-minded people to a lake in Wisconsin. This is in February in Wisconsin. So it is 0 degrees in the day and negative 18 at night. We're sleeping on tents in the frozen lake. It's a single log tent. And this is the first time this has kind of been done in this group. They didn't know the tent didn't heat below 0. So in the middle of the night, you keep putting a log on this tent and it burns out every 30 minutes. So you're replacing every 30 minutes, but it can't heat the tent. We just kept putting the log on. We felt better at least seeing it burning, even though we couldn't feel any heat. And we did yoga, 0 degrees on the lake in the morning. They had to cut through 3 feet of ice in order for us to plunge. And we got into a frozen lake. It was 32.3 degrees. I mean, all but frozen, obviously under the frozen portion. And we'd stay in it for 3 minutes. We did a lot of breath work in preparation for it. When we got out of the water, everyone's in their full winter gear and we're in swimsuits and we're doing these breath work drills to warm up our bodies before going into a sauna, which was out on the lake as well. But again, that was a different challenge. It was a self-inflicted, uncomfortable situation. And because of that, between the hot and cold therapy, I now have a membership to do that twice a week on my very own choice. But to consistently put yourself into cold water is a great way to do something uncomfortable that you can do in your own home. But it never gets warm. It doesn't ever get easier. You just know what to expect and you know how to handle it. And really learning how to breathe through it and to focus in a way that life doesn't really teach, allow, or give you opportunity to do unless you take the time for it. So that was a different element of growth and challenge is living in this cold world for 2 nights is all. But without that warmth and having to really work through that mentally and learn how to manage stress, anxiety, fears, discomfort. And it was incredible.
Yeah, that's interesting. So if you take these 2 experiences that you've had and what we went back to, I'm trying to get in the mind of someone listening to this right now. And, you know, sometimes experiences in life look different, of course. And, but someone who's feeling stagnant, someone who feels like, I especially think of, you know, a young mother who is, man, maybe they did all these things and now being a mother to small children or toddlers, that might be the hardest job in the world, where they could feel that even though they're doing a bunch of stuff all day, they feel stagnant. It's not that they are. It's not that they're being lazy. We aren't talking about couch potatoes here, just eating pork rinds and watching shows. We're talking about people who are busy in life and life is kind of taken over a little bit, the busyness of it, and they feel just this stagnant feeling in their life. What would you say is the general principle that you're teaching us that you found to be helpful to get out of that own situation in your own life?
I would say, first of all, is to just do something. We can all fit in something that's really important to us. It doesn't have to be big. Just do it. Second is know what your needs are and also know what your passions are and make sure you're doing something for you. So do something for you. And if you don't know what that is, then I do challenge you to fill up the bath with cold water, throw ice in it and get in it. Just be uncomfortable for just a second, because when you get out of it, you feel like you just seriously accomplished something hard and you feel alive. Cold water makes you feel alive. But as you're stagnant, it's really just because when you start to get comfortable in life or you get complacent, and I'm saying this in the sense of not that life's easy, because I think through COVID, everyone's experienced this stagnant feeling because we went into our homes, which was really a nice reprieve from the crazy world we were in, to getting really used to being in the home. And this transition back out of the home into life, into busy again is, and some people maybe stayed busy, but in a very difficult circumstance because now their kids are all at home. Mm-hmm. What have you done for you? Your kids will be fine. They'll be inspired by you. Do something for you, and don't just talk about it, do it. And also just feeling like I've lost myself. I've lost myself in through this process. I don't really have any passions. I'm just kind of blah. Mm-hmm. So you need to do something to make you feel alive. And you need to follow people that inspire you. You need to listen to things that motivate you. I always love the idea of winning the hour. We talk about it all the time. I like that first hour of the morning to be all about you. You will be better the whole day if you don't look at that phone. You get up, you move. And I love that motion equals emotion. We've lost emotion in our life. We've become stagnant, lost emotion, and motion equals emotion. And so start your day by moving, walking outside. It's getting to be a great time of year to do that. And then make sure that you are taking time to really, whether it's have gratitude, whether it's pray, whether it's meditate, whether it's just to be still, start your day all about you. First thing we do is pick up that phone. It really throws you off. It's a negative start to the day. But as you do that hour of power or winning that hour, notice your day will shift. Your energy will shift. Surround yourself with things that are uplifting and positive and inspiring, and then go do it. And don't envy everybody else doing it and you're not. Mm-hmm. Go do it.
Awesome.
And it's
one thing you said, sorry, Alli, one thing you said in the past is sometimes people are like, I don't even know, I've lost myself so much. I don't even know what I'm passionate about anymore. And if I heard you correctly in the past, you would say that just start trying things.
Yep.
Just start trying some things, and you might like it, you might not, but just do some things, and eventually you will find something that you feel passionate about.
So here's an example of what we're doing right now. Like I said, learning all this thing's great and all, but if I don't share it with people, then, yes, I've grown. But in coming back from Wisconsin, I rented out the Plunge. It's a place in Utah County that you can actually go and get in cold water and a sauna, and it is incredible. It's a great date night. Do it with any of your older children. It is awesome. But I rented it out for people at work. I rent out for partners, and half of them have memberships now. They're like, it's just what I needed. I did not realize that A, it would be that scary to get in cold water, and B, how good I'd feel because I did it. And then you get warmed back up again in the sauna, which is great. But I also have a group of women that are in management positions, women and men at my work, and they just are just feeling like whether they've gained weight or not, they do not feel themselves. Whether they've, felt negative or not, they're not themselves. So we just started a group to do a couch to 5K. And they have 30 days to do a 5K. We're not going to ask if they ran it, if they walked it, or anything, but just the training and doing a 30-day. If you want to run a 5K, then go do it. Start now and do it. One of them's like, I've always wanted to run a marathon. I don't even like running. I'm like, let's start a couch to 5K, and then let's put a half marathon on your calendar 6 months from now. And do it. It doesn't matter if you walk the whole thing, run 7 minutes, walk 3. It doesn't matter. Life is about finishing. It's not about winning. It's about being your best self. It's about being consistent. It's about being uncomfortable. It's about doing hard things and having passion for it all along the way.
And that's awesome, Alli. I just remember, as we're talking, you're inspiring me. I'm having all these thoughts like go through my head, and I'm like, but I remember going back to maybe where we started, and then I'll just have you share any final thoughts that you have. That I remember when I realized, and I was in denial for a little while, but I realized my college baseball career was over. And I still had some friends that were playing. And so I went to watch a game, and I remember I made it to about the bottom of the second inning, and I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't watch it. It was actually painful for me to see that person within me die, that I'm not Shad the baseball player anymore. I'm Shad. And I just love, I know that some of our kids, high school graduations are happening this week. And some kids have been that, even star athletes in high school often don't get to go on and play college ball somewhere. And some of them are going through that transition right now. And where they've all of a sudden, man, now I'm just college kid walking around a campus, and I'm not an athlete anymore. I'm not. And so this is a super relevant topic. And I just appreciate so much those things that you've shared with us, because some don't handle that transition very well. And it could go very bad for kids if they've lost their identity and who they are. And sometimes they go to some pretty bad places to try to discover, to try to fill that void, I guess. And so
well, I do have
what thoughts?
Yeah, I do. So just 2 weeks ago, I went and did, it was called Driveway to Hell. It was in Rome, Georgia. And we had to do a half marathon, and it was a half mile uphill, and then you go down and repeat it. And it was very steep. And when I was on that trail, I was walking up the hill with this older guy, and I'm like, oh, I'll just talk to him for a minute as I pass him. And no, I wasn't passing him. He was holding his own just fine and pushing me. But, he talked about, he was a family physician, and he was getting ready to retire. And this is relevant if you are a high school athlete that isn't playing in college and moving forward. It's relevant if you are in your college athletic career and moving forward. And so many times, most athletes don't choose when their career ends. As an employer working in entrepreneur, whatever, we have a little more of a choice when that retirement comes. But as an athlete, it's like we don't have a choice when that career's over. Someone chooses it for us, or we get an injury or something. It's really hard to wrap your head around that. And if I could go back and say anything to any of those phases in life, and I'll finish that conversation with him, is that it's a time to get really excited about what's next. There's a lot of things I didn't do in life because of my high school and college athletic and professional athletic career that I'm trying to do now. But my body is really paid for that experience, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. But my sister didn't participate in those things, and she is in tennis leagues and doing Spartans and doing races, and her body's in a different place. And she's experiencing so many incredible things, but she didn't have that college athletic opportunity. Life is what we make of it. And we have now a chance to start a new chapter that can be equally or more exciting, and you can do greater things with it. And so I was talking to this doctor, and he's like really in his late 60s, and he's going to be done, and he's just really struggling. That's his identity. And because of just what I've been going through and the transitions, there's a time in your life again to be that creator, to be the winner, to be the competitor. But there's a time to become the teacher. And really, when people are retiring or moving away from their sport or their job, is when they should actually start teaching it and be hired on for more money, because they're worth so much more. And our brains don't even work the same later. We're not the innovators anymore. Maybe we're getting passed up in some areas, but we can also offer something that other people can't. They can't do. And so take whatever experience you've gained in high school, in college, in your work, and think of a way that you can go and participate in things that make you uncomfortable. Sign up for something that is something you thought of maybe as a child or currently in high school that you'd really like to do. and go and do it. And then take that experience and invite your friends to it, share it, and see what that does for you. Identity isn't about what we did. It's not always about what we're doing. It's about what we're becoming in the process. And if we're stagnant, we need to go get uncomfortable. We need to go do something. And if you're retiring and ending something that you're afraid to take that next step, don't just go get in cold water to face a fear, but definitely see what way you can use your wisdom and experience to give back to somebody else. That will be more rewarding than anything you did and accomplished and the accolades and awards that you gained. If you can apply it, start a podcast, you're doing great things with this program, blessing lives every day, but it's always about finding a way to grow and to contribute back.
Awesome. Well, Alli, thank you so much for taking the time to share this with us. It's super inspiring. We're excited to have you on our podcast more. We've talked about that and are grateful for the contribution that you make and grateful for these thoughts. I know I'm leaving right now and I'm thinking there's just so many thoughts, so many conversations I want to have with my wife, with my kids. And so I hope that everyone else has that same experience as they listen to this. And so thank you for joining us today. And we really appreciate you, Alli.
You're so welcome. And I do have us on the schedule to the cold plunge, so be ready.
Okay. I'll tell my wife to be ready too. That'll be
perfect. I know she's not going to like that, but it's a pleasure. Thanks, Shad.
Well, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining the Sportlight podcast. We hope that you'll subscribe and share this with other people. Eyes up, do the work.
This has been the Sportlight podcast from Especially for Athletes, sponsored by Coca-Cola. You can learn more about Especially for Athletes by visiting the website at especiallyforathletes.org. You can also learn more about the book, The Sportlight, by Shad Martin and Dustin Smith at especiallyforathletes.org/book.